Building a Legacy at 85. Paul Hogan's final chapter, What Defines a Life Well Lived When the Curtain Begins to Fall. How do you measure the worth of a journey that took a bridge worker from obscurity to global stardom through triumph and scandal, love and loss, to arrive at the profound quietude of advanced age? At 85 years old, Paul Hogan stands at the threshold of life's final act. Not as the conquering hero he once was, but as something far more valuable, a man who has learned the true meaning of legacy through the crucible of experience. This is not the story of a celebrity clinging to past glories or desperately seeking one last moment in the spotlight. This is the extraordinary account of how a man facing his own mortality chose to use his remaining time to build something more lasting than fame, more meaningful than fortune, and more valuable than any entertainment he had ever created. It's the story of how wisdom earned through pain becomes a gift to future generations, and how authentic human connection proves more precious than any award or accolade. In an age where celebrities often retreat into isolation or denial about their advancing years, Paul Hogan has chosen a different path. Through his relationships with his son, his rare public appearances, and his carefully chosen final projects, he is demonstrating what it means to age with dignity, grace, and purpose. His story offers profound lessons about resilience, redemption, and the possibility of finding new meaning in life's final chapter. Chapter 1: The Reckoning of Time. At 85 years old, Paul Hogan awakens each morning in his Venice Beach home to confront a reality that would terrify many men of his generation. The undeniable truth that more of his life lies behind him than ahead. But rather than surrendering to despair or bitterness about what has been lost, Paul has embarked on perhaps the most important project of his entire career: the deliberate construction of a legacy that transcends entertainment and speaks to the fundamental questions of what makes a life meaningful. Currently, Paul Hogan lives a quiet life in Los Angeles, US. He has been battling health issues including muscle loss and chronic pain, which have made his daily life increasingly challenging, but these physical limitations have not diminished his mental clarity or his determination to use his remaining time purposefully. If anything, the constraints imposed by age and illness have focused his attention on what truly mattered. In recent public appearances, Paul appears thin and somewhat frail, but continues to maintain the optimistic and humorous spirit that once made him a beloved figure, revealing a man who has learned to separate his essential self from his physical circumstance. The body may be failing, but the spirit that made Paul Hogan extraordinary remains intact and perhaps even strengthened by adversity. The house in Venice Beach that once echoed with Linda's laughter and their son's childhood energy has been transformed into something approaching a sanctuary, not a place of retreat from the world, but a space for reflection, connection, and the careful cultivation of relationships that matter most. The spectacular ocean views that once provided backdrop for glamorous entertaining now serve a different purpose, reminding Paul daily of the vastness of existence and the precious brevity of human experience. Paul once confided in a rare interview with Australian media in 2016, his eyes somber, his voice quiet. "I once had everything: fame, money, family, and a woman I loved. But in the end, I lost the most important thing." But this assessment reveals only part of his current understanding. Yes, he has experienced profound losses that would break many people, but he has also gained something invaluable: the wisdom that comes from surviving those losses and finding new sources of meaning and purpose. The man who once defined himself through professional achievement and public adoration has learned to find satisfaction in much simpler but ultimately more sustainable forms of fulfillment. The quality of a conversation with his son, the satisfaction of a good book, the pleasure of helping a friend, the peace of watching the sunset over the Pacific, these have become the measures by which Paul evaluates the success of his day. Although he has lived alone since divorcing Linda Kozlowski in 2014, Paul revealed that he maintains a good relationship with his son Chance Hogan, and this relationship has become the cornerstone of Paul's efforts to build a meaningful legacy. The lessons he learned too late to save his marriages are being applied with dedication and wisdom to ensure that his relationship with Chance represents the best of who he has become, rather than the worst of who he was. The father and son often spend time together, sharing simple everyday moments, but these moments are anything but simple in their significance. They represent Paul's opportunity to demonstrate through action rather than words what he has learned about love, commitment, and the importance of being present for the people who matter most. The daily routines that structure Paul's life reflect his evolved understanding of what constitutes a well-spent day. Morning coffee while watching the sunrise, reading that engages his mind, phone calls that nurture relationships, modest exercise that honors his body's limitation, and evening reflection that helps him process his experiences and plan for tomorrow. These activities may seem mundane, but they represent a conscious choice to live deliberately rather than simply pass time. The health challenges that might have seemed like cruel punishment for past mistakes have become, in Paul's transformed perspective, opportunities to practice grace under pressure and to model for others how to face adversity with dignity. His approach to managing muscle atrophy, chronic pain, and the general frailty of advanced age demonstrates the same practical problem-solving skills that once built his career. Perhaps most remarkably, Paul has learned to view his current circumstances not as the sad decline from past greatness, but as the culmination of a life's journey that has finally arrived at its most important destination, the place where authentic self-knowledge meets genuine concern for others, where hard-won wisdom becomes a gift that can be shared, and where the approaching end of life provides motivation to make every remaining day count. Chapter 2: The Father's Redemption. The relationship between Paul Hogan and his son Chance represents far more than typical father-son bonding in their lives together. It has become Paul's most important project, his greatest source of meaning, and his primary opportunity to demonstrate that the wisdom gained through decades of mistakes and heartbreak can be transformed into something beautiful and valuable for the next generation. Although he has lived alone since divorcing Linda Kozlowski in 2014, Paul revealed that he maintains a good relationship with his son Chance Hogan, but this understated description conceals the profound intentionality and emotional investment that Paul has brought to ensuring that his relationship with Chance transcends the failures that characterized his previous family relationship. The father and son often spend time together, sharing simple everyday moments, and it is precisely in these everyday moments that Paul has found his greatest opportunity for redemption. Unlike the grand gestures and dramatic declarations that characterized his entertainment career, his relationship with Chance is built on consistency, presence, and the accumulation of small but meaningful interactions that demonstrate love through action rather than performance. "I got custody, which I wanted. Paul's son Chance, he's great, he's very funny, sense of humor, he's a great kid," Paul notes with obvious pride, but his satisfaction comes not just from Chance's qualities as a person, but from his own growth as a father who has learned to prioritize his child's needs and development over his own convenience or comfort. The decision to seek custody of Chance after his divorce from Linda was perhaps the most important choice Paul made during that difficult period. It demonstrated his commitment to breaking the cycle of paternal absence and emotional unavailability that had damaged his relationships with his older children from his first marriage. He said he's a stayer, he's a bit quiet if he knows his pepper art's around. He'll go and do something deliberately and then see himself. He's inherited that stare streak. Paul observes about his son's personality with the kind of detailed attention and affectionate understanding that suggests genuine engagement with who Chance is as an individual, rather than who Paul might want him to become. The process of single parenting in his 70s has required Paul to develop capacities for patience, selflessness, and emotional availability that his earlier relationships had never demanded or cultivated. "I've been the youngest at the PTA meetings and I've been the oldest one." Paul jokes about his unique position as an aging celebrity parent, but behind the humor lies the reality that he has committed himself fully to the ordinary responsibilities of parenthood. The geographic complexity of Paul's life, maintaining connections to Australia while living primarily in America, has been navigated with Chance's needs as the primary consideration. "I'm mostly living in America. I want to be over. 2 weeks can handle it." Paul explains about managing his time between countries, but the decisions about where to live and how long to stay are made based on what provides the best environment for Chance's development and happiness. The relationship with Chance has also provided Paul with a bridge back to simpler pleasures and more authentic forms of engagement with the world. Through his son's eyes, he has rediscovered the joy of everyday experiences that his celebrity lifestyle had complicated or corrupted. Playing sports, watching movies, sharing meals, and having conversations about hopes and dreams. These activities have regained their original purpose as expressions of love and connection, rather than obligations to be managed. Perhaps most importantly, Paul's relationship with chance has given him the opportunity to model emotional honesty and vulnerability in ways that his own upbringing and early adulthood never encouraged. Where Paul's generation of men was taught to suppress feelings and maintain stoic facades, he has chosen to share appropriate amounts of his authentic self with his son, including his mistakes, regrets, and ongoing efforts to grow and improve. The wisdom that Paul brings to fathering Chance has been earned through painful experience with his older children, whose relationships with him were damaged by his pursuit of career success and romantic fulfillment at the expense of family stability. His determination to do better with Chance represents not just personal growth, but a form of healing that extends backward to address past failures while moving forward to create better outcomes. The daily interactions between Paul and Chance have become opportunities for both teaching and learning. Paul shares the practical wisdom gained through decades of navigating success and failure, while Chance provides his father with fresh perspectives on contemporary life and the natural optimism of youth that helps balance Paul's hard-earned realism with hope for the future. The relationship has also given Paul a compelling reason to focus on his health and longevity. While he cannot control the aging process or eliminate his chronic health conditions, he has approached medical care and lifestyle management with new dedication, because he understands that his presence in Chance's life is irreplaceable and invaluable. Chapter 3: The Wisdom of Simplicity. In a culture obsessed with accumulation, achievement, and constant stimulation, Paul Hogan's embrace of simplicity in his final years represents a revolutionary act of consciousness that challenges everything contemporary society teaches about success and fulfillment. His transformation from someone who pursued maximum complexity and stimulation to someone who finds profound satisfaction in simple pleasures offers invaluable lessons about what constitutes a life well lived. Paul leads a pretty calm existence now, but this calm is not the emptiness of withdrawal or depression. It is the hard-earned peace of someone who has finally learned to distinguish between what matters and what doesn't, between authentic satisfaction and artificial stimulation, between meaningful engagement and mere activity. The house in Venice Beach that serves as Paul's primary residence has been stripped of the excessive luxury and ostentation that characterized his peak success years. Instead of serving as a display of wealth or status, it has been transformed into a space that supports reflection, relationship, and genuine comfort. The rooms are filled with books rather than awards, photographs of family rather than celebrity encounters, and furniture chosen for comfort rather than impression. He keeps to himself, he lives a simple life, but this simplicity is not poverty or deprivation. It is the conscious choice of someone who has learned that complexity often obscures rather than enhances genuine satisfaction. Paul has discovered that having fewer possessions, commitments, and distractions actually increases his capacity to appreciate what he does have and to engage meaningfully with the people and activities that truly matter. The daily routines that structure Paul's life reflect his evolved understanding of how to spend time in ways that generate authentic satisfaction rather than mere busyness. Morning coffee while watching the sunrise, afternoon walks along the beach, evening reading or conversations with friends. These activities may seem unremarkable, but they represent a conscious choice to prioritize presence and mindfulness over productivity and achievement. Recent images show an aging, lonely Paul Hogan, seemingly lost in memories of the past, but this interpretation misses the profound contentment that Paul has found in solitude and reflection. Far from being lost in the past, he has learned to use memory as a resource for understanding and appreciating his present circumstances while planning thoughtfully for whatever time remains. The relationship with material possessions that once defined much of Paul's identity has been fundamentally transformed. Where he once measured success through accumulation of money, property, and status symbols, he now finds satisfaction in having exactly what he needs and no more. This shift represents not just practical downsizing, but a philosophical transformation about what constitutes wealth and security. He often spends late afternoons walking alone by the beach, a place where he and Linda once strolled together, laughing like the perfect couple, But these solitary walks have become opportunities for meditation and gratitude rather than occasions for sadness or regret. The beach that once provided backdrop for romance has been transformed into a space for contemplation and connection with the natural rhythms that put human concerns into proper perspective. The social relationships that Paul maintains have been carefully curated to include only those people who contribute positively to his sense of well-being and purpose. Gone are the obligation relationships, professional networking, and social climbing that consumed so much energy during his peak career years. In their place are genuine friendships based on mutual respect, shared values, and authentic affection. The approach to entertainment and stimulation that now characterizes Paul's life reflects his discovery that less is often more. Instead of requiring constant novelty and excitement, he has learned to find deep satisfaction in repeated pleasures. The same morning coffee ritual, the same walking route, the same comfortable chair for reading. This repetition, far from being boring, has become a source of stability and peace. The relationship with technology and media that might overwhelm many people his age has been managed with characteristic practicality and wisdom. Paul uses modern communication tools to maintain relationships and stay informed about the world. But he has not allowed these technologies to dominate his attention or substitute for direct experience and personal connection. Perhaps most significantly, Paul has discovered that simplicity creates space for appreciation and gratitude that complexity tends to obscure. When life is not cluttered with excessive possessions, obligations, and stimulation, there is room to notice and savor the small pleasures that are actually available every day. The taste of good food, the beauty of natural light, the satisfaction of meaningful conversation, the comfort of physical rest. The financial management that supports Paul's simple lifestyle reflects wisdom gained through experiencing both wealth and its limitations. Having learned that money beyond a certain point does not increase happiness or security, he has structured his resources to support the simple but comfortable lifestyle he now prefers, while ensuring security for his son's future. Chapter 4: Reconnecting with Home. The relationship between Paul Hogan and Australia has evolved through decades of mutual celebration, bitter disappointment, and gradual reconciliation into something approaching mature wisdom about the meaning of home, belonging, and cultural identity. As Paul approaches the end of his life, this relationship has become central to his understanding of legacy and his efforts to heal wounds that seemed permanent just a few years ago. He always missed home, and he's always spent a lot more time here than people realize. He's back and forth all the time, but he doesn't call the press conference when he comes back to spend time with his family, revealing Paul's quiet but consistent efforts to maintain connections to the country that shaped him, despite the pain and controversy that had poisoned those relationships for many years. The Australia that Paul returns to now is different from both the country he left as a young entertainer and the nation that seemed to turn against him during his legal trouble. It is a place where enough time has passed for perspective to replace immediate emotion, where his contributions to Australian culture can be evaluated separately from his personal controversies, and where mutual forgiveness has become possible. I think eventually he will come back to Australia for sure. I think this is home. It's always been home for him. But this potential return represents more than geographic relocation. It symbolizes the possibility of cultural reconciliation, the healing of wounds that have affected both Paul personally and Australia's relationship with one of its most successful cultural experts. The process of reconnecting with Australia has required Paul to confront both his own mistakes and the country's sometimes harsh treatment of its most successful citizen. The tall poppy syndrome that contributed to his persecution during the tax scandal has given way to a more mature understanding of celebrity, success, and the complex relationship between individual achievement and national identity. The rare public appearances that Paul makes in Australia are carefully chosen to maximize positive impact while minimizing potential controversy or media circuit. His recent appearance at the premiere of Crocodile Dundee, the encore cut, demonstrated both his continued love for the character and work that made him famous, and Australia's readiness to celebrate rather than condemn his contributions to national culture. Recently, Paul Hogan made a rare appearance at the premiere of Crocodile Dundee, the encore cut, a special edition celebrating over 40 years since the release of the classic film. His return to the media surprised and moved fans who were thrilled to see the legendary actor once again, indicating that the Australian public's attitude toward Paul has evolved from suspicion and criticism to appreciation and affection. In an interview at the event, Paul shared, "I never thought my little film would become a cultural icon. I'm incredibly grateful for the love and support from audiences throughout the years," revealing both his continued humility about his achievements and his genuine appreciation for the forgiveness and acceptance that Australia has extended to him. The Tourism Australia campaign that featured Paul in 2018 represented a significant milestone in the reconciliation process. The campaign's viral success demonstrated that both Paul and Australia were ready to move beyond past controversies and focus on the positive contributions he could still make to the country's international reputation and tourism industry. Tourism Australia had basically gone to different advertising agencies in America and said, "We need to remind Americans about Australia as a tourism destination." But the decision to feature Paul in this campaign represented more than practical marketing considerations. It was a statement of forgiveness and recognition that his value to Australia transcended any temporary controversies or personal failure. Actually, I did the survey and did 10 countries and asked what they knew about Australia. It was famous Australian and it was Mick Dundee. Paul noted with characteristic self-deprecating humor about the research that led to his involvement. But this finding validated what many had long suspected, that his creation of Mick Dundee had achieved a form of cultural immortality that made him permanently valuable to Australia regardless of personal controversy. The younger generation of Australian entertainers and filmmakers who have reached out to Paul during his later years represent hope for the future and validation that his contributions to Australian culture have lasting value. Directors like Dean Murphy, who grew up watching Paul's television shows and wanted to work with him, demonstrate that his influence extends beyond his most famous creations. "I, like everyone else, used to watch the Paul Hogan show. I think I was like 7 or something when it started and was always just a huge fan," Dean Murphy recalled, representing a generation of Australians for whom Paul's work was a formative influence that transcended later controversies and helped shape their understanding of Australian humor and character. The possibility of Paul returning to live in Australia permanently represents not just personal preference, but cultural healing that would benefit both Paul and the nation. His presence would provide opportunities for mentoring younger entertainers, contributing to cultural projects, and serving as a living connection to a golden age of Australian entertainment that influenced how the world saw the country. Chapter 5: The Final Projects. As Paul Hogan enters what may be the final phase of his active career, his approach to choosing and developing projects has been transformed by his evolving understanding of legacy, purpose, and the limited time remaining to make meaningful contribution. No longer driven by commercial considerations or ego gratification, his project selection reflects a desire to leave behind work that honors his audience, celebrates his values, and provides closure for a remarkable journey through entertainment history. Although no longer actively involved in the entertainment industry, Paul Hogan expressed a desire to complete one final project to thank his fans before officially retiring, revealing his continued sense of obligation to the audiences who have supported him throughout his career, and his understanding that retirement represents an opportunity for closure rather than simply withdrawal. The concept of a final project carries profound weight for someone of Paul's age and health condition. It represents not just another entertainment venture but potentially his last opportunity to communicate directly with the world about what he has learned, what he values, and how he wants to be remembered. The pressure to get it right is enormous, but so is the freedom that comes from knowing that commercial success is less important than authentic expression. The parameters that define Paul's current project considerations reflect his evolved priorities and practical limitations. Any work must accommodate his physical constraints while allowing him to utilize the wisdom and perspective that represent his current greatest asset. The days of physical comedy and demanding action sequences are behind him. but the capacity for meaningful storytelling and authentic human connection remains intact. The collaboration possibilities that interest Paul now focus on working with people who share his values and understand his goals rather than those who offer maximum commercial potential or industry prestige. The relationships with directors like Dean Murphy, who approached Paul with genuine respect and creative vision rather than exploitation of his celebrity, represent the kind of partnerships that make continued work meaningful. I think the great thing about the movies that he made with Dean Murphy was that Paul Hogan had then gotten a little bit older and he played roles that were age appropriate, and he also played Australian men, and he was back in Australia, and that's why those movies work, demonstrating that Paul's most successful recent work has come from embracing rather than fighting his current circumstances and limitations. The thematic content that appeals to Paul for potential final projects centers around universal human experiences that transcend entertainment industry concerns, family relationships, aging with dignity, the meaning of success, the importance of authentic connections, and the possibility of redemption and growth throughout life. These themes allow him to draw upon his personal experience while creating entertainment that serves others. The format considerations for Paul's potential final work reflect both practical constraints and creative opportunities. Traditional feature film production may be too demanding physically, but shorter-form content, documentary participation, or more intimate theatrical projects might provide better vehicles for the kinds of stories he wants to tell and the messages he wants to convey. The audience that Paul envisions for his final work is not the mass market that consumed Crocodile Dundee, but rather people who are ready for more mature and reflective content. This includes older audiences who have followed his career and younger people who are interested in learning from someone who has experienced both extraordinary success and devastating failure with equal authenticity. The legacy considerations that influence Paul's project decisions extend beyond entertainment value to include the example he sets for other aging entertainers and the contribution he makes to discussions about growing older with purpose and dignity. His willingness to work within his limitations rather than denying them provides a model for others facing similar transition. The collaborative approach that Paul brings to potential final projects reflects his understanding that his greatest value may come not from starring roles but from mentoring younger talent, sharing institutional knowledge, and lending his name and experience to projects that serve larger purposes than individual aggrandizement. Perhaps most importantly, Paul's approach to final projects is characterized by gratitude rather than desperation. Instead of clinging to past glories or attempting to recapture earlier success, he approaches potential work as an opportunity to give back to the industry and audiences that have given him so much throughout his remarkable career. Chapter 6. Teaching through example. In an entertainment industry often characterized by ego, artifice, and the desperate pursuit of eternal youth, Paul Hogan's approach to aging in public has become an unexpected but powerful form of teaching that extends far beyond any formal education or structured mentoring. Through his choices, attitudes, and public presence, he is demonstrating valuable lessons about dignity, authenticity, and the possibility of finding meaning and purpose throughout all phases of life. In recent public appearances, Paul appears thin and somewhat frail but continues to maintain the optimistic and humorous spirit that once made him a beloved figure. But this description captures more than just persistence of personality. It reveals a conscious choice to model grace under pressure and to demonstrate that essential character can transcend physical limitations and external circumstances. The example that Paul provides for other aging entertainers is particularly valuable in an industry that often treats aging as failure and retirement as defeat. Instead of attempting to maintain artificial youth through cosmetic procedures or pretending that his circumstances haven't changed, Paul has chosen transparency and acceptance that paradoxically makes him more rather than less appealing and relatable. Paul hasn't had a facelift, but he had eye surgery. He had very heavy eyelids to the point of closing his eyes, and so medically they needed to be addressed. Paul explained with characteristic directness about the medical procedures he has undergone, demonstrating the difference between necessary medical care and vanity-driven attempts to deny the aging process. The relationship with his own mortality that Paul demonstrates publicly provides a model for others who are facing similar transitions. Instead of denial, anger, or despair about his advancing age and declining health, he has chosen acceptance coupled with determination to make the most of whatever time and capacity remains available to him. While time and health may no longer be on his side, Paul Hogan remains a vivid symbol of a golden era, but his symbolic value extends beyond nostalgia to include representation of how to navigate life's final chapters with dignity, purpose, and continued contribution to others. His example suggests that aging can be approached as an opportunity for growth rather than simply decline. The authenticity that characterizes Paul's public presence in his later years stands in stark contrast to the careful image management and artificial perfection that characterizes much celebrity behavior. His willingness to appear vulnerable, acknowledge mistakes, and admit limitations provides a refreshing alternative to the superhuman facades that often make celebrities seem inaccessible and unrelatable. The relationship with his son Chance that Paul demonstrates publicly provides a model for other fathers who may be struggling with similar challenges in maintaining meaningful family connections despite career demands, personal failures, or geographic complications. His prioritization of family relationships over professional obligations offers a template for others facing similar choices. I got custody, which I wanted. Paul's son Chance, he's great, he's very funny, sense of humor, he's a great kid. But more important than Paul's pride in his son is the example he provides of actively engaging in parenting responsibilities and finding joy in that role regardless of his age or other circumstance. The approach to professional opportunities that Paul models reflects wisdom about the difference between staying relevant through authentic contribution versus attempting to maintain relevance through attention-seeking behavior or inappropriate attempts to compete with younger entertainers. His selective approach to projects and public appearances demonstrates how to remain engaged without becoming desperate or pathetic. The relationship with Australia that Paul has rebuilt through patient, consistent effort provides an example of how to repair damaged relationships and restore trust that seemed permanently lost. His willingness to acknowledge past mistakes while working to demonstrate positive change offers hope for others who have experienced similar public or private relationship failure. The financial management and lifestyle choices that characterize Paul's later years provide lessons about the difference between wealth and security, between luxury and comfort, and between impressing others and satisfying yourself. His embrace of simplicity, despite having the resources for continued extravagance, demonstrates the freedom that can come from escaping material competition and social pressure. Perhaps most important, Paul's example demonstrates that it is possible to find new sources of meaning and purpose in life's later chapters, that personal growth can continue regardless of age, and that the wisdom gained through experience, even painful experience, can become a gift that benefits others as well as oneself. Chapter 7: The Art of Letting Go. One of the most challenging aspects of aging successfully, particularly for someone who has achieved extraordinary public success, is learning when and how to let go of identities, relationships, and capabilities that once defined who you were. Paul Hogan's journey through this process offers profound lessons about the art of graceful release and the discovery of new forms of meaning that can emerge when we stop clinging to what was and become open to what might still be possible. I once had it all, fame and a wonderful wife. But in the end, I still feel like I lost something most important. Paul admitted in a rare moment of vulnerability, but this acknowledgement of loss represents not defeat but the beginning of a deeper understanding about what constitutes lasting value and genuine fulfillment. The process of letting go of his identity as a romantic leading man and successful husband has been perhaps the most difficult aspect of Paul's aging journey. The man who once epitomized masculine confidence and romantic success has had to learn to find meaning and self-worth independent of those external validations and relationship statuses that once seemed essential to his identity. Paul never publicly revealed the exact conflicts that led to their marriage falling apart. But from what he shared, it was clear that he never truly forgot Linda. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Paul admitted, "I still think about her every day. Sometimes I wonder if I had changed a little, would she have stayed?" revealing both the persistence of regret and the gradual acceptance that some losses cannot be reversed or fully understood. The relationship with Linda that once defined much of Paul's emotional life has required a particularly complex form of letting go. Not forgetting or minimizing what they shared, but accepting that their time together has ended and that clinging to what was prevents appreciation of what remains possible. This process of release has been gradual and incomplete, but ultimately necessary for Paul's continued growth. Meanwhile, far away in Morocco, Linda Kozlowski is living the life she had always dreamed of, free and happy beside a man who loves her for who she truly is. And Paul's ability to acknowledge Linda's happiness without bitterness represents a significant achievement in emotional maturity and genuine love that prioritizes another person's well-being over one's own desires or ego needs. The professional identity that once consumed so much of Paul's energy and self-definition has also required conscious and deliberate release. The man who once competed for roles, negotiated contracts, and managed public image has learned to find satisfaction in much smaller but ultimately more sustainable forms of creative expression and contribution. Although no longer actively involved in the entertainment industry, Paul has discovered that stepping back from the relentless demands of professional entertainment has created space for other forms of creativity and contribution that may be less visible but more personally meaningful. The art of letting go of professional prominence has revealed opportunities for influence and impact that don't depend on public recognition or commercial success. The physical capabilities that once enabled Paul's most successful work have declined in ways that required accepting new limitations while discovering alternative ways to accomplish goals and find satisfaction. The man who once relied on physical comedy and action sequences has learned to find expression through storytelling, conversation, and the subtle forms of performance that remain available despite physical constraint. Paul has been battling health issues, including muscle loss and chronic pain, which have made his daily life increasingly challenging. But his approach to these health limitations demonstrates how letting go of previous physical capabilities can lead to discovery of mental, emotional, and spiritual resources that were previously underdeveloped or unappreciated. The financial security that once seemed essential to Paul's identity and well-being has been recontextualized through the recognition that beyond meeting basic needs, additional wealth provides diminishing returns in terms of actual satisfaction and security. Learning to let go of the pursuit of maximum financial accumulation has freed Paul to focus on relationships and experiences that provide more lasting value. The social status and celebrity recognition that once validated Paul's sense of self-worth have been replaced by more intimate and sustainable forms of validation that come from genuine relationships and personal growth, rather than public acclaim. The art of letting go of fame addiction has revealed the possibility of finding meaning in anonymity and privacy. Perhaps most significantly, Paul has learned to let go of the illusion of control that characterizes much of younger life. The belief that through sufficient effort, planning, and determination, we can shape outcomes according to our preferences and avoid unwanted experience. His acceptance of uncertainty and mortality represents a form of wisdom that can only be achieved through experience and reflection. Chapter 8: The Meaning of Legacy. As Paul Hogan contemplates the approaching end of his remarkable journey from bridge worker to global icon, his understanding of legacy has evolved far beyond the entertainment achievements that first brought him fame. His current conception of what he wants to leave behind reflects a mature wisdom about what endures, what matters, and what constitutes a life's true value in the broader context of human experience. "I'm incredibly grateful for the love and support from audiences throughout the year," Paul reflected during a recent public appearance, but this gratitude extends beyond appreciation for professional success to encompass a deeper recognition of the privilege and responsibility that comes with having influenced so many people's lives through entertainment and example. The entertainment legacy that Paul created through Crocodile Dundee and his other work represents far more than commercial success or cultural phenomenon. It demonstrates the power of authentic character representation to bridge cultural differences, challenge stereotypes, and create genuine human connection across national and linguistic boundaries. This aspect of his legacy suggests that entertainment at its best can serve purposes beyond mere distraction or profit. Actually, I did the survey and did 10 countries and asked what they knew about Australia. It was famous Australian, and it was Mick Dundee. Paul noted with characteristic humility about his character's global recognition, but this finding reveals the profound cultural impact of creating a character so authentic and appealing that it becomes synonymous with an entire nation's identity and international consciousness. The personal legacy that Paul is building through his relationship with his son Chance represents perhaps his most important contribution to the future. The lessons about love, commitment, resilience, and authentic character that he is passing on to the next generation through daily example and interaction may prove more valuable and enduring than any entertainment he ever created. The father and son often spend time together, sharing simple everyday moments, but these moments constitute a form of legacy transmission that happens through presence and relationship rather than formal instruction or inheritance. The values, perspectives, and wisdom that Paul shares with Chance will influence not just his son's life, but potentially generations of descendants who will carry forward whatever they receive. The Australian cultural legacy that Paul helped establish through his breakthrough work represents a form of national service that extends far beyond entertainment industry contribution. By creating positive, appealing, and authentic representations of Australian character and culture for international audiences, he helped shape how the world sees and relates to his country in ways that continue to provide benefit decades later. The professional legacy that Paul leaves for other entertainers includes not just creative achievements but also examples of how to handle success and failure, how to age in public with dignity, and how to maintain authenticity despite the pressures and temptations that come with fame. His career trajectory offers lessons about resilience, reinvention, and the importance of staying connected to core values. Paul Hogan expressed a desire to complete one final project to thank his fans before officially retiring, indicating his understanding that legacy includes responsibility to acknowledge and honor the people who supported his career. This desire to express gratitude rather than simply withdraw represents mature understanding of the reciprocal nature of entertainment relationships. The moral legacy that emerges from Paul's later years may prove more significant than his entertainment achievement. His example of facing aging and health challenges with grace, maintaining family relationships despite past failures, and finding meaning in simple pleasures provides a template for living well that transcends celebrity culture and speaks to universal human experiences. The redemptive legacy that Paul's story represents offers hope to others who have experienced significant personal or professional failure. His demonstration that it is possible to learn from mistakes, rebuild relationships, and find new purpose even in life's final chapters provides encouragement to people facing similar challenges in their own lives. While time and health may no longer be on his side, Paul Hogan remains a vivid symbol of a golden era, but his symbolic value extends beyond nostalgia to encompass representation of human potential for growth, change, and contribution regardless of circumstances or limitations. His story suggests that every life contains possibilities for meaning and positive impact that persist until the very end. Perhaps most importantly, Paul's legacy demonstrates that authentic human character ultimately matters more than professional achievement, that genuine relationships provide more lasting satisfaction than public recognition, and that the wisdom gained through experience, even painful experience, represents the most valuable gift one generation can pass to the next. Epilogue: The Bridge to Forever. As the sun sets on Paul Hogan's extraordinary life journey, the bridge worker who became a global icon stands revealed not as a larger-than-life entertainer, but as something far more valuable and rare, a human being who has learned through experience what truly matters and has chosen to dedicate his remaining time to sharing that wisdom with others through example, relationship, and authentic presence. Recently, Paul Hogan made a rare appearance at the premiere of Crocodile Dundee, the Encore Cut, a special edition celebrating over 40 years since the release of the classic film. His return to the media surprised and moved fans who were thrilled to see the legendary actor once again. But this appearance represented more than nostalgic celebration. It symbolized the completion of a circle that began with a young man's impossible dreams and culminated in an elder's grateful acknowledgement of a life fully lived. The transformation that Paul has undergone from someone who measured success through external achievements to someone who finds meaning in internal growth and authentic relationships represents one of the most profound character developments in entertainment history. The man who once needed the world's applause to feel valuable has learned to find satisfaction in the quiet approval of his own conscience and the genuine affection of the people who know him best. I never thought my little film would become a cultural icon, Paul reflected with characteristic humility, but this modesty reveals a man who has learned to see his greatest achievements not as personal triumphs, but as gifts that emerged through the mysterious collaboration between individual effort and universal forces that no one fully understands or controls. The relationship with his son Chance that has become central to Paul's current identity represents the most successful project of his entire career. Not because it has generated wealth or recognition, but because it has created something that will outlive him and continue to influence the world long after his entertainment contributions have been forgotten. The love, wisdom, and values he is passing to the next generation constitute his most important and enduring legacy. The father and son often spend time together sharing simple everyday moments. And in these moments, Paul has discovered what he had been seeking throughout his entire career, without knowing it. The profound satisfaction that comes from being completely present with someone you love, sharing authentic connection that requires no performance or artifice, simply the gift of mutual presence and genuine care. The house in Venice Beach where Paul spends his days has been transformed from a monument to past glories into a sanctuary for present reflection and future preparation. The ocean that stretches to the horizon beyond his windows serves as daily reminder of the vastness of existence and the precious brevity of individual life within that immensity. He often spends late afternoons walking alone by the beach, a place where he and Linda once strolled together, laughing like the perfect couple. But these solitary walks have become something far more valuable than opportunities for nostalgia. They have become moments of meditation, gratitude, and preparation for whatever transition lies ahead. The legacy that Paul is constructing in his final years extends far beyond entertainment history to encompass fundamental questions about what makes a life meaningful, what constitutes authentic success, and how to face mortality with dignity and grace. His example offers invaluable lessons to anyone struggling with aging, regret, family relationships, or the challenge of finding purpose in life's later chapter. The Australia that once felt like home, then became hostile, and now offers reconciliation represents the possibility that all relationships, personal, professional, and cultural, can be healed through patience, humility, and the willingness to grow beyond past mistakes. Paul's gradual restoration of his relationship with his homeland demonstrates the power of forgiveness and second chances. I think eventually he will come back to Australia for sure. I think this is home. It's always been home for him. And this potential return represents more than geographic preference. It symbolizes the completion of a spiritual journey that has taken Paul around the world and back to himself, to his values, and to his understanding of what truly matters in the brief time we have. The final project that Paul has mentioned completing may or may not come to fruition, but his life itself has become the most important work he could create, a demonstration of human resilience, authentic character, and the possibility of finding meaning and purpose in any circumstances. His story proves that it is never too late to grow, never too late to change, and never too late to discover new sources of meaning and satisfaction. As Paul Hogan enters the final phase of his remarkable journey, he does so not as someone clinging desperately to past glories, but as someone who has successfully navigated the transition from public performer to authentic human being. The bridge worker who once built physical connections across water has constructed something far more important and lasting: bridges across generations, cultures, and the mysterious divide between entertainment and real life. His legacy will not be measured in box office receipts or critical acclaim, but in the lives he has touched, the wisdom he has shared, and the example he has provided of how to live with authenticity, face adversity with grace, and approach the end of life with curiosity, gratitude, and hope. The boy who once dreamed of entertaining the world succeeded beyond his wildest imagination, but his greatest achievement was learning to entertain the possibility that every day offers opportunities for growth, connection, and contribution to something larger than ourselves. In the end, Paul Hogan's story is not about fame or fortune or even entertainment. It is about the universal human journey from innocence through experience to wisdom, from isolation through connection to love, and from fear through courage to peace. It is a story that continues to unfold each day he chooses to meet life with openness, honesty, and hope, and it will continue to inspire others long after his own journey has reached its conclusion. The bridge worker became a legend, but more importantly, the legend learned to become fully human. In that transformation lies the true meaning of a life well lived and a legacy worth leaving behind.